Abby, The Last of Us Part 2. When Naughty Dog released the sequel to one of the most beloved games of all time, they knew they were taking a risk, but nobody expected the firestorm that followed the introduction of Abby Anderson. Abby isn't just a secondary character, she is the catalyst for the entire plot, and for many, the most polarizing figure in modern gaming. The spark that ignited the internet was the brutal early-game death of Joel Miller. Killing off a legendary protagonist is a bold move, but forcing the player to take control of his killer for nearly half the game was a subversion that split the entire industry down the middle. The controversy went far beyond standard "I don't like this story" critiques. It became a cultural flashpoint. Fans felt a deep sense of betrayal, leading to review bombing on an unprecedented scale. The discourse surrounding Abby touched on everything from her physical design to the morality of the cycle of violence. Even the voice actress, Laura Bailey, faced real-world harassment due to the character's actions. Whether you view her as a victim of her own circumstances or an irredeemable villain, Abby changed the way we talk about protagonist-driven storytelling. She remains the ultimate example of how a developer can use a character to manipulate player emotions, proving that sometimes the most effective characters are the ones you love to hate. Kratos, God of War. Before he was the soulful father we know today, Kratos was a different kind of monster. In the original God of War trilogy, the Ghost of Sparta was the definition of an anti-hero, leaning heavily on the anti. The controversy surrounding early Kratos wasn't just about the over-the-top gore, it was about his complete lack of a moral compass. In his pursuit of vengeance against the gods, Kratos would regularly murder innocent civilians, often in horrific ways just to solve a puzzle or refill a health bar. This sparked intense debate among critics, who argued that Kratos was an irredeemable protagonist with no heroic qualities. The inclusion of the infamous mini-games involving NPCs only added fuel to the fire, with many questioning if the game was glorifying senseless cruelty for the sake of shock value. While the violence was part of the extreme culture of early 2000s gaming, Kratos stood out because the game rarely punished him for his atrocities. Looking back, the controversy is even more interesting because Sony eventually rebooted his personality to make him more sympathetic. It's rare to see a character so controversial that the developers eventually had to give him a redemption arc spanning an entire decade just to make him relatable again. Quiet. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Hideo Kojima is no stranger to eccentricity, but Quiet from The Phantom Pain remains one of his most debated creations. From the moment she was revealed, Quiet's character design, consisting of a bikini and torn leggings, set the internet ablaze. Critics argued that she was a blatant example of the male gaze, designed solely for fan service in a game that otherwise took its military-political drama very seriously. The controversy deepened when Kojima defended the design, claiming that once players learned the reason for her outfit, they would feel ashamed of their words and deeds. The lore explanation was that Quiet breathes through her skin via photosynthesis due to a parasite, meaning clothes would literally suffocate her. This explanation only polarized the community further. Some fans accepted the creative sci-fi reasoning, while others saw it as a transparent excuse to keep a female character nearly naked. Even within the game, the bonding scenes and camera angles often prioritized her physique over her development as a deadly sniper. Quiet remains a lightning rod for discussions about how female characters are portrayed in AAA gaming, proving that even a character who doesn't speak a single word can provoke a massive industry-wide conversation. Adolf Hitler. Wolfenstein series. The Wolfenstein series has always been about taking down the Nazi regime, but the inclusion of Adolf Hitler as a physical character has always pushed the boundaries of what is acceptable in mainstream media. The controversy peaked with the new Colossus, where Hitler is portrayed not as a terrifying mastermind, but a delusional, frail, and paranoid old man. The scene where he appears is incredibly tense, mixing pitch-black comedy with the inherent horror of who he represents. The backlash came from multiple angles. In some regions, like Germany, the game had to be heavily censored, removing symbols and altering his appearance to comply with strict laws regarding the depiction of unconstitutional organizations. On the other hand, some argued that portraying him as a pathetic figure humanized a monster in a way that felt uncomfortable. Then there's the historical controversy of Mecha Hitler from the original games, which turned a genocidal dictator into a literal video game boss fight. The Wolfenstein developers have always walked a razor-thin line between historical commentary and pulp action entertainment. By putting Hitler on screen, they forced the gaming world to confront where the line should be drawn when using real-world tragedies for interactive entertainment.
I loved him, Mr. Hitler. Super good. Mr. Hitler.
Irish, Red Dead Redemption. Rockstar Games is famous for satire, but with Irish in the original Red Dead Redemption, many felt they slipped into lazy stereotyping. Irish is a recurring character who assists John Marston, but as his name suggests, his entire personality is built around being a drunken Irishman. He is portrayed as a cowardly, unreliable, and constantly intoxicated liar who provides comic relief at the expense of his heritage. The controversy surrounding Irish wasn't a massive media explosion like GTA, but rather a long-standing criticism regarding cultural representation. Critics pointed out that while the American West was full of diverse immigrants, Irish felt like a character pulled straight out of a 19th century anti-immigrant cartoon. For a game that was praised for its gritty realism and nuanced characters, Irish felt like a step backward into caricature territory. This highlights a recurring theme in Rockstar's writing, the fine line between mocking societal tropes and simply reinforcing them. While many players found him hilarious, the character remains a point of contention for those who felt the drunk Irish trope was a low-hanging fruit that ignored the depth Rockstar is usually capable of delivering. Raiden, Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. In the history of gaming, perhaps no character has ever caused a more immediate sense of fan betrayal than Raiden. After years of anticipation for the sequel to Metal Gear Solid, fans were eager to step back into the boots of the legendary Solid Snake. Kojima's marketing team leaned into this, showing only Snake in trailers and demos. However, after the first hour of the game, the perspective shifted to Raiden, a rookie with long blonde hair and a completely different personality, and stayed there for the rest of the experience. The backlash was legendary. Players felt they had been victims of a bait-and-switch, and the hatred for Raiden was so intense that it became a defining gaming meme for years. He was called whiny and annoying compared to the grizzled Snake. However, this controversy is what makes the game a masterpiece in hindsight. Raiden was designed to be a surrogate for the player, someone who had only experienced war through VR training, or video games. Kojima used Raiden to deconstruct the idea of the action hero, but at the time, the gaming public wasn't ready for the subversion. Raiden eventually redeemed himself by becoming a cyborg ninja, but the scar of the MGS2 protagonist swap remains one of the most famous internet meltdowns in history.
You know what I'm talking about.
All right. The bomb was where you guessed it would be. You were right, and you saved my butt.
As long as you
Trevor Phillips, Grand Theft Auto 5. Trevor Phillips is the most extreme character Rockstar has ever produced, designed specifically to be the most controversial part of GTA 5. While Michael and Franklin represent different criminal tropes, Trevor represents the pure chaos of a player who just wants to go on a 5-star rampage. The spark that sent the media into a frenzy was the infamous mission By the Book, where the player is forced to perform a graphic, interactive torture sequence as Trevor. The scene was condemned by human rights organizations and politicians alike, who argued that it crossed a line from mature storytelling into gratuitous cruelty. Beyond that single mission, Trevor's entire existence is a lightning rod for debate. He is a character that treats extreme violence as a hobby, yet the game occasionally tries to make you sympathize with his loyalty and broken past.
This lovable psychopath archetype polarized players. Some saw him as a brilliant satire of the average GTA player, while others found him so repulsive that they struggled to finish the game. Trevor didn't just push the boundaries of the ESRB, he broke them, cementing his place as the most unhinged and debated protagonist in the history of the franchise.